Okay, hello and welcome everyone. I'm Jason Gumpert, and we are here today to learn about what it takes to establish a winning BI strategy for Microsoft Dynamics. And here to speak with us on that topic is someone who many of you probably know from his long list of contributions to the Dynamics community over the years. He is Brandon George, the Director of BI for Sunrise Technologies, and he is also a Microsoft MVP, and we're really glad to have him with us today. As we get started, I just want to add that we invite you to add your feedback and ask questions today during the presentation. Brandon will leave time at the end to take questions. You can use the Q&A block or the chat that you'll see on the right side of the webcast session here. So without further delay, please allow me to welcome Brandon George.
Hey Jason, thanks for the great introduction, and thanks everybody for showing up for today's webinar. Like Jason pointed out, it is a focus around creating a way to have not just a strategy, but like I said, a winning strategy for Microsoft Dynamics customers. And I'm sure there's a few of you that have already went live and have been customers for a while, as well as possible prospects, and so this should apply across the spectrum. So to help us get started, I think it's interesting to start with stats. Everybody loves stats, and it's kind of a proven fact, actually, that when you show someone a percentage stat, that they retain that very well. And there is a recent stat that came out. I attended the Data Warehouse Institute's Boston Executive Summit a couple of weeks ago, and they released at one of their surveys from respondents that among the most mature organizations and this is how they rate themselves. So the most mature organizations of how they rate themselves in relation to their data and business intelligence, so being able to put data to work and actually use business intelligence. They rate themselves as a 30% adoption rate for usage. And again, the key here, right, this is the most mature organizations out of that responding. So, and that's a high number. That's like the highest number actually that was given on self-rating. That means that for these organizations that are the most mature, 70% of their business processes, of their users, and the decisions being made do not actually still have the adequate data for making the decisions. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and we're going to get into some of the context of this as we proceed here. But this is very interesting and a key point to really keep in mind as we talk about driving towards a strategy that you can deploy no matter what technology you use, and actually no matter what Dynamics brand or flavor that you happen to deploy, whether it be ERP or CRM even. So this is interesting stuff here. So taking that, what are we trying to achieve? So agenda for today, and obviously more than just stats from the agenda side of things, but looking at changing the focus to data and away from technology. So really looking at this and saying, you know, this is not a technical project, this is not a technical effort. Technology does enable what we're trying to achieve, but we've really got to change how we look at BI projects in general. Then going into looking at asking the right questions. So, and what the point of this whole thing is to get to value fast and often, or early and often. We're going to look at some use cases and that have taken this kind of new approach, this approach that makes companies or allows companies to be very agility focused, to where with their data and how they're reporting and how their business is changing, they're able to move a lot faster in a less rigid way than traditional BI approaches. We're going to also look at some game-changing trends, look at just how summing up how we employ this at Sunrise, talk about our next webinar, and then as Jason talked about, as you have questions, please submit them or put them in the Q&A, and at the end, we'll leave about 10 or 15 minutes for a question and answer session. So let's continue on. So the starting or lead point into this was a focus around the maturity, really, of an organization. And the maturity of the most, the percentage point being at 30%, kind of led us into this. And there was a recent Forbes article. So there was a study done by SunGard that Forbes article is related to, that kind of gives highlights into the fact that business intelligence, it really isn't that intelligent yet for most companies. It's not doing what it's set out to do. And there's a lot of reasons for this adoption problem and maturity level. And obviously, as technology progresses, it does offer new ways and avenues to reach value faster. But some of the highlights from that is worth noting, again, in relating to help set the context of maturity in an organization and BI adoption, and then how there is a real need out here and out there in your companies as well, and I'm sure you know this as I'm even telling you this, that to uptick in how to deploy data correctly so that people can make decisions from it versus just being pure gut or being gut feeling or how they've just done it in the past. So interesting here, what was quoted that almost half of all companies still feel their reporting needs, and majority of them being still reactive, but still fill those needs through manual extraction. And then obviously spreadsheets and PDFs. Spreadsheets, Excel is a huge part of every organization, but Excel in a very, very manual way. Many companies as well, what's quoted, they don't want to replace all the different systems they may have. So think about it, if you have ERP, you have CRM, maybe a PLM system, maybe a warranty management or some other best-of-breed application, this creates, it's not so much as the silos of the past, but it's a different level of siloed data that crosses different schemas that from a holistic view is still hard to create for a lot of companies. And going down that path leads to some traditional thought processes around data warehouses and why such projects were created in the first place, which again have a high rate of failure because of how long they take to complete and how fast it takes to get to value and ultimately how rigid they are. So this problem, though, is still remains of being able to create these holistic views and being able to span across multiple systems, best-of-breed systems for companies. So we're seeing this out there, and so is Forbes from the SunGuard report. And then finally, and this may be an obvious statement for a lot of people, but it's something that was referenced a lot, and that's having everybody operating on the same data is a huge advantage. Well, how do you cross that chasm from multiple systems to having that single business schema? And that's the kinds of questions and things that is important for context to think about, because business intelligence in general, I mean the term, it's such a large umbrella of terminology and technology and things that live underneath this, but ultimately we have to change our way of thinking out of this very technological focus around business intelligence, and it's a business project. It's the word business is in front of intelligence for a reason, and we have to think about and change our thinking of how we approach things. And so that's the importance of this context for building into the strategy. So taking this a little bit further and just kind of putting that point home, really, again, on this maturity rate. Again, only 30% adoption. So that means usage. And with all the great things that we have now from a device perspective and the online presence of everything and every piece of data, it's still not widely being used correctly or in a way that allows people to do their job easier or actually be more effective. So we're still in a very reactive world. It's a very reactive world. And reaction versus reactive is two different things. So correct reaction to something, that's one thing. But being in a reactive-only analysis world, that's driving from the rearview mirror. I mean, there is value that you gain from that, and there is a maturity process. But in order to make that change and to become a visual company, to become a data-driven company, to really put your data to work, there is a huge gap that exists for the majority of organizations still to this day. And it's just very valid to point that out and kind of talk through. So with that, what are some of the reasons that we're seeing from a poor adoption rate, and how does that relate to relate to what we're talking about? So one of the first reasons, or one of the top reasons, number one at least, is the too rigid for use and inability to easily change. So seeing this out in the field myself, and also from like the Data Warehouse Institute and a couple of other areas that report on business intelligence and entities, this is the number one reason that a lot of people, or a lot of organizations, and you can change these out actually, 1, 2, and 3, depending on what organization you are and where you're at in your maturity level, you could swap them around. So basically these are just the top 3 from a point of view, from at least what we've found in our research. So, but the too rigid for use and inability to change. If you think about a data warehouse project, or at least a traditional data warehouse project, where there's a long tail investment in creating this normalized schema that feeds from multiple sources, it takes a long technical time, or it has, at least in the past, taken a long technical time to really reach to that endpoint. And then once that's created, this ETL processes and this rigid schema now exists that it's hard to change. And so once you've got to that endpoint, the business is already adapted. The business has already changed. And so this creates a shadow IT kind of movement in organizations to where they go off and create their own reports. They'll get some report and some data out of a data warehouse, if they even have one, or out of an ERP system or CRM, and then they'll merge that or mash that up, or however you want it, whatever label you want to use. They'll take that and create their own reporting and managing that inside their own departments because of this rigid usability and inability to easily change and adapt as the business adapts. And that's that traditional as well, that traditional report cycle problem where you give IT report requirements, they develop it based on the requirements, you go to the user acceptance testing, it's what they asked for, but it's not what they need, and it's a revision, and the cycle continues on. That's related to that. Number 2, the missing data to complete tasks. So again, this goes back to that, what we've kind of already alluded to, that no single business schema. So you go from number 1 to where maybe you have something in place, maybe there is some kind of reporting, maybe there is some kind of data mart or some other entity that data is being pulled from, yet one of the biggest complaints is it's too rigid and not easy to change. Then the other side of that is that there's not the right amount of data. The data is not there to complete a job, even if there is a data warehouse or even if there is something in place. And so this also comes from that point of multiple systems. So a company, a lot of times, for example, Dynamics ERP or Dynamics CRM, it will only be one part of the total solution. You'll have some PLM system, again, you'll have some warranty system, some custom manufacturing execution system, whatever it may be. Dynamics, a lot of times, greater than 80% of the time, you're going to have something else that you use that collects data that you want to take advantage of. And so that missing data complete task, that no single business schema, that's a heavy one. And then the other thing, at least from the top 3, is that the reporting and BI. So having data, again, in the hands of people, but doing so in a way that is just not report-oriented, to where they go and click and it's a reactive report, and then they go and run through a grid and they look at the data in the rows, and then they take that and maybe do some kind of pivot table, or they'll run several reports to get what they're trying to kind of need. That's the problem with number 3, is that embedded within the workflow of the users. So if you think of the user experience, going from a dashboard into a form that may have contextual BI on the form itself so they don't have to run a report, or having something very proactive in their workflow that engages them to do their next set of tasks, and having prescriptive analytics eventually grow from that, not just descriptive and predictive where you're talking about the past and predicting the future, but allowing the intelligence platform and what you're building from your data to actually help create suggested things, the prescriptive workflow, and doing so at different levels of the users and the resources that make up your company, these different roles and personas. So that's what we found is number 3 at least. And again, there's a lot more, and you can label this in several different ways. But this just, again, kind of gets you going and thinking about from a perspective of why or is it reporting the adoption rates are so low as related to BI projects. So with all this context and understanding some stats and some of the problems that a lot of companies, majority of the companies really are reporting on, and where do you start from a dynamics perspective? And one of the first things, especially from a technology perspective, there's just a number of applications, and there's a number of software vendors, and I mean, even within Microsoft alone, there's Office and SharePoint and SQL Server. Then you've got products like MicroStrategy and Tableau and Click, and then you've got even the niche product vendors that live only in the Dynamics ecosystem for BI. So there's a lot of different options and opportunities from a technology perspective, and a lot of times it creates this illusion that is a problem versus helping solve the problem. So one of the first things that we have to get in our mindset is we don't need to focus on the technology first. It is a mistake to think that when you're going down a path of really putting your data to work that, okay, we're a Microsoft shop, so we're just going to use the Microsoft stuff. You're limiting yourself. Or maybe you've used the Microsoft stuff before and you're ready to try something else and you just have it in your mind what you want to try, like one of these niche products maybe. It's, again, it's missing the point of the value to start with the business side first and start with the questions you're trying to derive to and the answers that you're trying to answer. Starting there is the really starting point. And so just getting away from the technology and making it a very business-focused project. The second area is that at least I've seen in my own experience and seen out in the wild, and this relates directly to the data warehouse, the traditional data warehouse projects that have existed and still exist to this day. Don't attempt to do everything at once. So I hate to use the word agile, but it is an agility enabling focus, and that's what you have to be in business today. You have to be able to be dynamic and respond and be proactive, understanding what your customer needs and trying to do so in a lot deeper way. And so having agility, especially around your data and especially around intelligence, is imperative, and that's the kind of oxymoron related to the longer tail BI projects and the rigid things that they create. So don't try to do everything at once. Just focus on a specific business process, one of high value. No matter what maturity level you're at, you can pick an area, and we'll go over a few functional areas and examples of that here in a minute, but focus on one of those areas. So identify a process and just focus on that. Don't try to do every metric in the company. Don't try to do every region or every business unit even. Start with a specific known area that you can get high value from. You can see from the process of the manual Excel creation and people having to pull from different sources to be able to get to their job or get to the data to get their job. The month-end close process takes way too long. Whatever it may be, find a specific area of value for your company and just focus on that. Don't try to do everything at once and become a very dynamic-focused, excuse the pun for dynamics, but a very dynamic-focused kind of company for your business intelligence needs. And then finally, on the kind of 3 areas of where to start at least, how to start creating a strategy that we've at least deployed and seen work very successfully for companies. And it's something that you can replicate and something you can build from. But so change the strategy, right? Change the question that drives the strategy from one of IT to one that really focuses on, how do we increase productivity from our data? Get away again from the technology. Just think about, the data that you're collecting. No matter what it's in, no matter what state it's in and what maturity level, if it's in the AS400, if it's in a DB2 database, Oracle, Microsoft SQL, it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What you want to be able to focus on is from the data we're collecting from our customers, your sales, your product insights production, your suppliers, the entire supply chain, retail, whatever it may be. Think about it from a data perspective and think about it from how can you make yourself more productive in these areas that you're going to focus on. And again, don't try to do everything at once in doing so. So this then leads to, once you have an area, and again, we'll get into some examples here in a minute, but once you have identified a process or an area that you're going to focus on from your company to really deliver value fast. And when I mean fast, I'm not talking about months, I'm talking about a matter of weeks. You should have something in the hands of users, or less even, depending obviously on scope, but definitely at the largest point, a matter of weeks, have something in the hands of users that they can use that is helping them do their job. And so, but the three questions to get to that point after having that process or area identified, you need to ask yourself, what are the user roles then in this area? Is it a sales enablement? So if that's the case, you have a VP of sales and regional sales managers and customer service reps and then customers themselves. And what does that sales enablement mean? But what are the roles? So just write down 2 or 3 focused roles. It doesn't even have to be every role. That's the other thing. Remember, don't try to do everything at once. It could be that you want to have a very fine scope around 2 roles, helping enable their job very specifically, and then building from there. From that, then for the roles, what are the data points? So again, going back to how can we become more productive out of our data, now let's get specific into the area that we're focusing on. And if you don't know where to start as far as metrics related to the data, at least you know the area and like what they use from an application perspective for their daily task. These great ERP applications that are creating all this data, CRM as well. Start from what they need to answer and what they care about on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. Then look at it from an actual versus forecast versus average. Whatever, from a few set of metrics. If it's sales, you're looking at sales volume and quantities and where sales are happening versus where it's expected and forecast. Make these simple steps first and build out. If you're already a mature organization, you have some of these metrics employed, yet you're trying to do something more with mobile, that's the focus area. You don't have to start from scratch. If you already have something of value, you already have you're a greater maturity level, at least from your company, but still it's the same kind of mindset. What is your focus area? What do they need to really care about then for those roles? And then finally for the roles, how do they need to access their data? Is that role, most everybody's mobile now, so we might as well just start assuming that very soon that everyone is going to be mobile. But for some users, their role in the organization is purely like accounts payable clerk, for example. So they're just going to be on the web, or they're going to be for using an application, or they're going to be inside Dynamics or Dynamics CRM, and that's all they're going to do. Understanding that, though, helps get you to the point of getting away from the deluge of tools down to where, okay, now that we understand that this needs to have a mobile aspect, it needs to have a single view across Dynamics, ERP, AX, or GP, CRM, and your PLM system, whatever it may be, single holistic view across that, delivered within the application itself as well as mobile. So having that kind of understood and ranking that from a critical need versus a nice to have, understanding, being honest with yourself with that. Could it be that helping them do their job would be just having a single view that they can get to from the web? Roll that out. Don't wait for the mobile piece. Roll the sections of that out as well. But so the 3 questions again to ask, what are the user roles for that process? What are the data points and metrics they care about? Again, don't try to do everything. Pick some specific sets of deliverables points, high value points, write it down in English. Don't worry about the technology, and then you'll be able to proceed forward. This will lower the scope of what you're trying to achieve, and it'll make it a business-oriented process and at the same time. Because your subject matter experts, the people who are going to be using this, they're going to be highly engaged. It's going to be a smaller set of people as you do it across the organization each time. You'll be able to build smaller success stories that you can actually help increase adoption. So this will help increase user adoption, because when they see what happened for sales and customer service, and they see the success rate and how fast you can move, they'll want the same thing, and the adoption rate will raise up to a much higher percentage, and you'll have a success story and a blueprint that you can build from that really can be 100% technology agnostic. Moving from that, moving forward and just talking about, so here's some of the functional areas and roles, just some examples that we've seen out there, at least from Sunrise and the projects we've done for Dynamics customers. Sales and sales enablement. So from a maturity rate, if you're just really starting, or maybe you're just going live with ERP or Dynamics AX or whatever it may be, you're just not really starting out, what we see a lot of times is either a sales enablement focused or an operational intelligence. I mean, those are really the starting ones that we typically see from a functional area and roles. And operational intelligence is more of a wider span, right? You need to get a little bit smaller, but like procurement, production planning, those kinds of things would be in that operational intelligence side of things. But then also from like sales and sales enablement. So what are some of the roles associated with that? VP of sales, field sales. And the kinds of things that we see in these metrics with, again, across region, to be mobile. Like your sales team, or at least every sales team I know, it is a mobile sales team. You're out there, whether it's your distributor network, mixed with your inside sales, mixed with your outside contract sales reps, whoever it may be, you're able to target them correctly and create something from your data that allows them to have correct action. So going from data to decision, from decision to action. I mean, that's what we're trying to enable. So that sales and sales enablement, that VP of sales focus. Customer insights, customer service, so that customer service department or customer insights area, this kind of crosses down from the sales. So obviously sales is the front end of the spear. Most companies, that's what's generating revenue, and then you have what's impacting revenue is your production or your procurement, your sourcing. You're a sourcing company, or you're producing something, or you're a services company as well. But either way, customer service is right behind and is the tie between obviously sales and whatever you're purchasing, procuring, or making, or both. And so that typically follows, we've seen actually, and again, depending on the maturity rate, but that typically follows that sales and operational intelligence. And then also another area that we see high visibility in, and a lot of companies uptaking and focusing on first, is a mobile-only scenario. So this is well beyond the concept of just having a dashboard on an iPad or having a dashboard on an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever the popular device you may be using. That's just taking the same thing and making it mobile, which, I mean, that's great. You can get some information, but this is more in line with actually creating real workflow intelligence, what we call workflow intelligence, to where you're allowing a field sales rep to have their iPad, interact with data from the multiple sources that maybe make up a customer in your company and their sales order and intelligence related to customer insights, so that that sales rep can get that from this app experience and be able to actually interact with that intelligence, make decisions, and take action within that same app experience that routes back to the source systems. So it's going beyond traditional business intelligence in the sense of here's a report and I do something in a reactive way, to where here we're enabling mobile workflows. You're able to turbocharge processes so that your field sales or people that are very mobile even your customers and how you interact with partners and vendors. So all of those kinds of things. And what we've seen in this example, we've seen like a lot of retail operations. If you have retail store and retail managers, obviously sales executives, account managers, field sales, field operations as well. Like if you're doing warranty calls or you have maintenance kinds of things that you're worrying about and caring about from a customer satisfaction perspective, and you want a better way to interact without having to be an app development company. So that's what we're seeing as well, is mobile-specific intelligent projects from just starting points. And again, keep in mind, doing this and picking high-value points and very specific deliverables and delivering these things in a matter of weeks or at most weeks, and if not sometimes days, you're able to build a success story internally, and that really increases adoption rate. One of the biggest things that a lot of those adoption issues alluded to, from the rigid and not having the data needed to complete a job, and what's really not spelled out but is an underlying element, is trust. And if you can establish trust early and often with you trust your data, and you trust the process and the intelligence and analytics that's being derived from it, then that helps increase the adoption rate as well as making it to where they can do their job a lot easier. So that's what we're seeing, at least from a functional area. So taking this a little step further and putting some context around, like, how do you go about this? So this is actually an example of what we call these things waves at Sunrise, these business intelligence waves. So we do both ERP projects and business intelligence projects. Sometimes, or half the time, we have a BI project embedded with an ERP project that may be going live or in the process of rolling out. And then the other half of the time, we have just BI projects because companies have already went live, they're about to go live, or they have nothing to do with Dynamics. And so either way, and no matter what we use from a technology stack of our, what we have is our options to complete these deliverables, we have the same approach. So it's taking this understanding, it's taking this knowledge of the industry and knowledge of the business problem that exists around making these things work, and creating this approach that we call these wave approaches. And this is just a typical mid-market. What we usually see is anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. And so this is that midpoint, mid-market kind of single wave that has a well-defined deliverable set that at the end of week 6, it will be deployed and be used in the hands of the users, because they're involved in the process very early on, from helping us with the data modeling to design, refinement, and deployment. And so this gives us a set of steps that we can communicate, and it's, for those familiar with SureStep, it's a methodology. I'm not going to call it SureStep because SureStep has a lot of stuff to it. This is very specific to BI and how we've seen successful projects go from start to deployment and keeping things in line with the deliverables that, that we're targeting. So provision and plan, obviously we're provisioning anything from a technological standpoint that we need, and then planning out the task related to deliverables, and then data access. So we know what we're targeting now. We understand the roles. We understand the delivery mechanisms that we're going to be using. And so where does the data live? You know, again, going back to the point of there's multiple systems in most companies. Dynamics AX is one thing. CRM is a different thing. PLM is another thing. So if we're crossing those systems, we need to establish data access, data modeling. So we have a concept around data access, data modeling. We're able to move pretty fast actually in this, to where when we're working with a specific user and we know now we're talking English together with like what they're trying to measure, we're able to work with them in a very iterative way to where we can get their attributes and metrics up and running fast. Then come up with a design and let them see that process. They may be even helping us with it by dragging and dropping and helping us mock up what they're after. We do into refinement because, again, you got to learn from your past, right? And so no matter what you do in reporting, and whether it's mobile, whether it's creating a pixel perfect report, whether it's more proactive alerting and dashboard concepts, whatever it may be, there's always refinement right after the initial deliverable. So that's why you get the users involved often and early, the real business users that are being targeted. You get them in the data modeling, the design aspects, then we're refining for the last bits to where we're deploying it. And we've done this over and over again now, and it continues to build from itself from when we have the initial wave all the way through for an organization. So with that, I've got a few use cases to talk through this, just to give some context again of how we've taken this knowledge set and how we've taken this approach and used it across a few use cases. So this first use case is for an enterprise client of ours. They had data across, again, several systems. That's one of the problems and people face. They had 1,000+ reactive-based reports, so a lot of reports, and that's probably very familiar for a lot of people on this call. There's just countless amount of reports, and you may or may not have telemetry in how often they're ran, how often they're really used. But yet, when it comes down to it, everybody needs their reports. So 1,000+ reactive reports, and then there was issue with consolidating views across the business and ability to dive into the details when they could even consolidate a view into like what's making up a specific metric. So with the wave-driven approach and the technology stack that we used, we're able to create a single business schema across several data sources, allowing for fast data discovery and consistent reporting. So what does that mean? We're able to have this business view that we derived, abstracting away from the technology and the complex schema because we know those things, working with the business users to where they can actually now refer to that and use that in a very adaptive way and in this wave approach. So it rolled out and we're rolling out and continue still, even though we've been working for more than a year for this client on the BI stuff and reporting. We continue to build on that success. So we started with a specific area of the business schema, building that out, and then continue to roll with that because we can move dynamically with, or very dynamic, and make use of things like in-memory technologies to allow us to be very agility-oriented. Converted those 1,000+ reactive-based reports into just several key critical data sets. And so in doing so, again, this helps build towards that single schema, and we're able to be very proactive in the sense of changing the business to where they no longer have to worry about running a report, doing something from that, and being very active in analysis, but actually having now things around prediction and actually having insights and proactive thresholds that are alerting these different now users that have started to adopt intelligence and analytics in this organization. And then finally, allowing users to drive insights through visual discovery. That's a huge part. Like every analytics platform, every vendor from like Microsoft Power BI, the Power View, to MicroStrategy's Visual Insight, Tableau, all of these are visual discovery oriented kinds of tools. It's meant to try to create self-service, and so we're actually having a success story with this. And continue to see this throughout every project that we're working on, that this allowing data sets to exist in a business schema, allow them to be dynamic, that you can add to them as the business grows or as you do more projects. Yet as the users are targeted, they can take the access to the data set they have and drag and drop and work with the data as they know it and be able to create insight very fast, actually. So that's an example, use case one. And real quick, so they did, is an AX 2012 client. They used the Microsoft Power BI and MicroStrategy to achieve this. The second use case, again, same approach from a wave perspective, same approach for how we look at the BI projects. They're different than ERP projects. They're not as long-tailed. They need to get to deliverables faster. So same concepts. Using this example use case two, this is a larger mid-market client, and they already have a decent level of maturity related to intelligence. Early on adopter of data warehouse kind of concepts, but is an aging intelligence platform. So very similar concepts to the schema being rigid and then creating multiple paths of how people reach data. which then created a trust issue, obviously, because you can get different metrics from different places for the same data, and that was created in response to how rigid things are. Hundreds of reports then, because of that, again, from the reporting outlets, no easy way to consolidate, and then also the need for, and this is for most companies really, but crossing legacy data and its impact on the operational intelligence as they start to go live with ERP. So similar concept in reducing all those reports to critical data sets and getting rid of reports they really don't need to run. Excel was a huge focus and continues to be, and it's done so in the right way. So it's not a siloed off, one-off kind of concept. It's using the latest and greatest from Microsoft Power BI and the Office stack that makes up the BI stack for Microsoft to be able to enable Excel to be a correct medium for delivery of reports, yet still connecting to that source data as needed. And then, again, keeping that focus on the early wins often and fast, we're able to get to value over and over and over again, and it's driving towards deeper gains and deeper maturity and deeper adoption because of those early on wins related to this. The final use case here is a mid-market or smaller mid-market, tried to largest to smallest, I guess, here, with a lot of data silos. So they spent countless hours in IT for data validation and reactive report development. Ability to visualize the company and cross into the details, again, did not exist. There was no real visual aspect of the data. It's still that old rows and grids concept, and no easy way for the consumption. This is another huge point for this company, was they realized the need for being able to get to their data fast and accurately on the mobile devices they have, which are iPads and Androids. So the result, again, taking this approach and being very focused on this wave and having deliverables that you can hit within that time frame and get to users and get to the hands of the users so they start getting value from it. So we're able to create that single business schema again across all the data points for the seamless reporting. We'll roll that out for the different areas of focus, and it makes it to where it's very dynamic. Visual insight, so user-driven data discovery for creation. So now that we had that established and we had business language around attributes and metrics, the people that actually own the data could actually work with it. And they could do so in a very visual manner, not just grid-oriented. And further, being able to have this kind of concepts, like we talked about that mobile app experience, creating such a thing that really goes beyond just reporting on a tablet, but allows true interaction and actually write back. And that company, they're actually an AX 2009 and MicroStrategy focused for their BI. So you actually see a real good mix of the Dynamics later stuff and Microsoft later stuff, MicroStrategy, Microsoft only, and then we see things like mature in the ERP cycle, yet tried several different products and to no avail really, and then able to take this and really reach what they're trying to do, which is make things a business project. Get out of the technology churn, get out of the technology being the focus, turn this into a business-oriented kind of focus and reach value fast. And that's what we're seeing out there. From a game-changing, so I put this slide up here just to kind of point out the game-changing trends that we're seeing and some of the things that are happening from multiple vendors that are allowing this agility focus, this age of the customer that we're in, this being able to bring in as many data points as we can so that we can make decisions correctly and actually doing so in a way that increases user adoption. So that's what we're seeing with these game-changing trends, at least, and one of the biggest ones is the in-memory. So in-memory allowing for agility with insights, and doing this stuff within memory now with some of the latest technology does allow us to get away from how rigid and how long it takes to do data warehouse projects. So it's not meant to be a gut and replace if you have a data warehouse, if you have a data mart, you have something of value that you're using. It's not meant to replace, you go in and rip those things out and just do everything in memory. But what you're able to do with in-memory is you're able to augment that stuff, you're able to do new things that you're reporting from an in-memory, and you're able to still take advantage of maybe the maturity level of what you've already got in your organization. Another area is location analytics to derive insights around customer segments. And this is more than just a pin placement of where the Google Maps location of the address of the customer. I mean, this is more taking the data that you have access to from your brands, from your products, your categories, what you're doing in marketing, and taking that from an intelligence side of who your customers are and then what segments they exist in. There's all kinds of data from the government that you can tap into, as well as, at least from a location-based perspective, they're one of the largest generators of this stuff. But using this in a way to help create this segment of one concept, in that you're trying to get to the point of where the customer experience and insight to your customers, you're able to create better campaigns, more targeted campaigns, and things that work as far as customer service and sales and products. So location analytics is actually at the heart of a lot of this, to be able to segment off, who your customers really are, what kinds of things do they like, and so forth. Predictive analytics for the masses. So one of the things that I keep seeing over and over again, and what I keep hearing about too, is that predictive analytics scares a lot of people. It's something that may be out there in the future that you may do. You may already be doing it and not realizing it, or don't call it that, but you've got demand planning and forecasting that fit well, at least from a linear regression point of view, into this. But ultimately, this predictive analytics, what we're starting to see is you start to measure things, and you start to do these early BI projects and start to increase your maturity related to data. And so if you're measuring sales volume and forecasted that amount, well, you can predict that amount. So you don't have to go and try to create new metrics and things that may help you. Take the metrics that you're targeting, and you can actually, with these same kind of tools that you're deploying your new BI solutions with, for at least for the good ones, you're able to take and have a predicted metric for that same time frame, that same kind of bucketed area. And you're able to tweak that and be agile with it, so that in a way that helps you maybe give you a 10-day lead time versus at the close of the month. And so there's a lot of things that are making that easier, and so we're seeing this predictive analytics for everyone, and it's because you're able to do that for the metrics that you're already looking at versus trying to create this new thing out there. And then finally, obviously, this mobile piece, right? Everybody's mobile. We all have phones. We all have tablets, or at least we all have phones. And just like everyone uses, or most everyone uses Excel, so you might as well do it right. Everyone is using mobile to do something, to do a part of your job. And so you might as well take advantage of that. And with some of the later technologies that exist now, from like MicroStrategy and some other ones, you're able to really create a experience that breaks traditional intelligence barriers, and it goes well beyond just a mobile dashboard or a version of the dashboard on a tablet. So with that, we have kind of an area we focus on dynamics, for business intelligence. This is a quick slide just to give you an insight of how we classify business intelligence at Sunrise. And this is from a mobile analytics and extended complete. So we have three pillars, because again, business intelligence can be a broad term that everyone can talk about and can add all kinds of different labels underneath it. But we break it into three pillars: mobile, and that mobile, that any data, any popular device, and anywhere concept, that taking your data and really putting it to work and going beyond your four walls. Analytics, so a real focus on some of the other stuff we talked about with data visualization, predictive, and pixel-perfect reporting to customers and vendors, documents, dashboards, and then further extending and completing what you've invested in Dynamics. So your investment in Dynamics for collecting data is one half of the story. Now we need to tell the other half with putting that to work. And so extending and completing that investment with being able to embed throughout users' workflows intelligence that increases adoption and usage of data for a company to make a decision, and also ability to write back into these source systems. So that gives a little bit of glimpse into the categories, at least, of how we classify BI and employing what we've talked about here. With that, we're about to come to the question and answer session. I know we've got one question right now, and I appreciate your patience with getting to the question there, so just give me 1 second. I do want to talk about the next webinar that we're going to have. So it's going to be next Thursday, and it is an AX-focused webinar for those that are Dynamics AX for intelligence. And what we're going to cover is, so taking and building from these concepts, examples, using role centers, Excel, mobile, for example. So showing examples of that in use with Dynamics AX. So taking and building from this. And what I'll do is I'm going to put into the chat area the link to this for everyone. So let me copy and paste that. So everyone should be getting a link here in just a second. That so you can go sign up for that. It'll be an hour long, and again, it'll be very focused examples of how to do that. So with that, that brings us to our question and answer session. This is my contact information. You can feel free to email me. I do have a new blog, the Data Primes. I'm focused on the data assets and really putting data to work, and my Twitter handle. So with that, it looks like we have our first question lined up. And so in cases where your data is highly denormalized, such as AX 2012, how do you get from data modeling to design in a period of sort of 2 weeks? Hitting the LOTP system directly could cause poor report. Okay, so the question is, with AX 2012 specifically, how are you able to reach the point of data modeling? How are you able to move fast in regards to how denormalized, or how normalized, excuse me, the database is of AX 2012. So for those that don't know, AX 2012, when it came out, it comes super highly normalized. And then if you look at AX 2012 R2 and R3, there's even further normalization that's taken place. These are entities like products and customers and so forth that join several tables. How we're able to do that is honestly knowing the schema, and we have views that help us virtualize the data. So we're able to do that in a way because we know the schema very well. We can connect to what we need then to be able to use the views to virtualize data virtualization, or at least the starting point of data virtualization. And then from that point, we actually, to move faster, we use MicroStrategy's in-memory capability to where we can do the joins in memory through cube joins so that it can suck in this data. It doesn't have to have a performance hit. The other things that take place, too, that make use of the Microsoft Stack technology is that if you have AX 2012, most likely you have SQL Server or SQL Server 2012, depending on what version. But with SQL Server 2012 and greater, you can actually use always-on mirrored database. So you can actually query up-to-the-minute data from an ERP instance with the always-on mirror copy without hurting performance as it's routing to transactions to the live ERP database. So in short, concepts of data virtualization, because we know the schema very well. We understand AX inside and out, so that gives us a leg up on that schema to be able to denormalize it very fast. We've done it several times over and over again, so we know what we're having to denormalize. And then we use the technology stack actually with the, like I said, the in-memory stuff that allows us to move a lot faster. Let's see here. I think we have one more. So in each of the example cases, how long was the process? So that's a good point. Let me go back and kind of show what we took here. So example use case 1, this is a larger client. We still did the waves, so the waves were broken into 6-week intervals. Yet it was a larger budget because we're doing more waves at one time, and we were achieving more things at once. Because they're larger, we could scale more. But it was still the same concept of waves, so 6-week waves. We actually had, at one point, 3 7-week waves and a following 6-week wave for a section of deliverables that we were working on for this larger client. So since it was large and we're achieving a lot more, our total budget was bigger, obviously, here, but we still had the same concept of 6 to 8 week kind of waves. The example use case 2, similar concept, always 6 but smaller, always wave after wave. We still did several waves. I think we're actually ended up being 6 total waves going on for their ERP processes, their go live as well. We were doing this with them. And they were each 6 weeks. The first one, being the shortest, was 4 weeks to help lay out a diagnostics focus. And then the final one, that was also 1 6-week wave. This is actually from the initial part of this was a 1 6-week wave, and now we're in our second wave that has 2 resources, but again, it's only 6 weeks that we're able to target deliverables, get it up and running fast, denormalize the data, and hand it over to the user in a trusted way that performs very well. See what other questions we have now. Can you expand on the in-memory process? So the in-memory process question. So the in-memory process, again, so there's 2 things. So we use a lot of Microsoft and MicroStrategy, and it depends on the user, or the, not the user obviously, but the company and what they're after. But we found with Microsoft and MicroStrategy, you have a very complete story. So I have to mention those 2 vendors because of what we use and how we use their in-memory capability. From the Microsoft side, with SQL Server 2014, which is newer, so obviously it's not really out there as much, but being able to load an entire table into memory or page files of relational data into memory now exists. So you can be very specific about this. This is a huge improvement when you're wanting to query that, obviously, and increase the ability of how often you can hit live data. So that's from a stack perspective of Microsoft. What we're seeing, though, from a real agility perspective and being able to cross multiple databases and multiple database vendors, that's with MicroStrategy. And so they have an in-memory engine that allows us to cross multiple sources, and actually within the schema that we create in there in memory, we can actually join within the in-memory space. So we can cross a CRM data set about a customer with an ERP data set about a customer in memory within the MicroStrategy set itself, and then actually you're able to produce the single schema or single business view across those organizational entities. Let's see what else. These are some good questions. We've got, is mirroring supported by Microsoft? So mirroring, yeah. So number 1, yes, mirroring is supported. The always-on technology for SQL Server 2012 and greater is what you need to look at. So having an always-on database member group that for your AX data or your C or GP data, whatever it may be, you can have an always-on mirror that then you can connect to from your reporting aspect and be able to hit that. Now, with the in-memory capability and the ability to scale across schemas, across endpoints, yeah, I always call it the 80-10-10 or the 80-20. So 80% in memory, 10% cached, and then 10% direct query. And so if you think about it, from the 10% cached at the top, it's the same data and same report even that people keep firing over and over again. You don't have to go and get that. You can just go get this almost a static thing that only gets reprocessed every so often. That's 10% of the time. 80% of the time, where most people are living, you can do in memory. So you can have it to where it's in memory, it's loaded up, it's sub-second query performance, and they're able to hit off that without impacting the live system, even if you use always on or not. And then the last 10%, when you design these things correctly and in a way that you understand that you're able to go from this cache to in-memory to direct query, the direct queries, when they actually happen, to whether it's to the direct source system itself or to a mirrored copy or to a data mart, whatever it may be, they're very index-oriented where clauses. And the result sets, because it's coming down from the summarization correctly, you're going to get to the details that are specific. You're going to have the result set coming back very fast. But I know that kind of led off from the is mirroring supported by Microsoft, but look up always on. Why do you choose MicroStrategy over other BI tools? Very good question. So I spent a lot of time in the past few years building up to the choice of MicroStrategy, actually, to complete out what we can do with Microsoft. And I want to underline that in my response. To complete, because it's not a compete, like you don't have to choose one or the other. For example, Excel is very much a part of the MicroStrategy story. Anything we make in MicroStrategy, you can consume in Excel. You have role center pages in Microsoft to where these dashboards that you create, and they're made of web parts. Well, anything that we do in MicroStrategy can be a web part inside SharePoint. So it's not a compete scenario, it's a complete and extend scenario. So that's one reason that it fits well into that place. That MicroStrategy is often called the Switzerland of business intelligence because they can work with anybody, is the statement. The other side to that is that a lot of our customers have more than Microsoft. They'll have a DB2 instance. They'll have some kind of cloud application. They'll have something in Oracle. They'll have something, name it, as far as the database type or source of where the data is stored that is not Microsoft. And then they'll also have a lot of Microsoft stuff. So because of that reason, and because we're seeing that in our customer base, we had to have a tool that we could consume from all these sources very easily and very effectively and very performance-oriented. And so, hands down, MicroStrategy stands out for that reason. And then the final things on this, at least from that really pushed us in this area, is this mobile play. There's no one out there that is doing the mobile side of BI and intelligence like MicroStrategy is doing. These are native applications that run on these phones and tablets, meaning that you can do stuff offline in an effective way. This is not like a web page wrapped in an app container that a lot of these other vendors have for their mobile, so they can check off on the mobile BI requirement. MicroStrategy is a true native app experience, and you don't have to develop in the native app experience to get there. It's the same skill set that develops your schema, that you develop your report. You can actually have a user, a power user, or a user drag and drop and create a report in MicroStrategy's Visual Insight and actually use that with just a configuration on an iPad. There's nothing else needed. So you don't have to know the technology of iOS, and you don't have to know the technology behind Android and develop in Java and then develop in Objective-C or Swift. So for those reasons of crossing multiple data sources and doing so in a very efficient way, for completing and extending out where Microsoft stuff kind of leaves off, or there's maybe holes in the total solution to be able to drag across the organization, or to extend deeper into mobile, or to do things with like Visual Insight that just aren't possible unless you have it. And then finally, the mobile piece is why we chose it. Price too. I mean, that's another thing. They just recently released a price scale that makes these projects just very affordable. So, in looking at this, I want to see if there's any other questions. I'm going to check my Q&A. Let's see here. So, and it looks like there's some more questions around potential for active secondary. So yeah, obviously there's opportunity depending on like what you use from database and where your data lives, and if it's web, and if it's in the cloud and you need to consume it for services, and where you're pulling data from. So the question on active secondary and other kinds of opportunities, it exists, and there's things that exist from a hardware level and a software level that allows you to snapshot, mirror, take advantage of data a lot faster than just 8 hours behind when you process an OLAP cube. Okay.
I don't see any other questions here, Brandon.
All right, Jason. No, I appreciate it. No, I appreciate everybody attending and obviously answering the great set of questions. Feel free, again, to contact me. You have my contact information, several ways to get in touch with me, and also attend our next webinar to see some things in action.
All right, Brandon, thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks to everyone in the audience for the questions and for your attention. We will be following up with a link to the recording as well, so please stay tuned for that. So with that, I think we will wrap up. Thanks for attending, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.